Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel, and we are covering video lecture series on Java programming, and today's topic is how to define variables in Java program. We used to have different types of variables that are being used depending upon the type of data we want to store. We used to define different types of variables depending upon the type of data we want to store in those variables. So in order to store any data, we must need to define the variable based on the data type. In this video session, first I will discuss the basics of these different data type variables, and then I will create a new project in NetBeans and I will show you how you can actually create these types of variables. So the first one is integer. Integer is being used to store integer values like 5, 10, 15, 20, and the integer variable size used to be 4 bytes. I have two other integer data types also, which are long and short. Long integers used to be having size of 8 bytes. In order to store the strings in the variables, we need to use the string keyword to define the string based variable. In the strings, we can store characters as well as words. In order to store a single character in the variable, then we use to define the character data type variable, which can be done by using the char variable, char variable. Normally it is used to store ASCII letters, and its size used to be 2 bytes. Then we have floating and double data types, which are being used to store decimal numbers. Float data type is used to store small size like up to 4 bytes of decimal number, while the double is used to store up to 8 bytes of decimal number. And the last one is boolean, which is being used to store boolean values like true, false, or zeros and ones, and the size of the boolean variable is 1 bit. Let's create a new project in NetBeans and try to define these variables and try to display it on the console. So I will create a project in NetBeans. New Java project. I will give the name Datatypes tutorial. Okay, we have to write down the program in the main method. So over here I will try to define the variables of all these data types. You have to write down their specific keywords of the data type at the start, and then we can write down the variable name. The variable name can be any name, but we need to make sure that the variable name should not contain any space. It should not start with numerical value. It must need to start with specific English letter, and it can contain numbers at the end or in the middle, but it cannot start with the numbers. So let's say in order to create integer variable, we need to write down the int, and I can give the name var1, and then we have to close the line by writing down the semicolon. So I just created integer variable over here, and I did not assign any value. So in order to assign the value, one option is you can assign in the same line. I can say int var1 equal to 5, or I can write down the definition first, and then I can say variable 1 or var1 equal to 5 and then line close. So this is the same thing. Or I can say int var2 equal to 10. So this variable 2 will contain the value 10. So in this single line variable, I assigned the value also at the start. I can go with another type, which will be based on the combination of the existing variables. I can say int var3 equal to var1 plus var2 variable 2. So these are the three different ways that we can create the variable and we can assign values to those variables, and these three types can be applied to all data type of variables. If you want to go with long, short integer, just use the word short and say var4 equal to 3, and long var5 equal to 1209, and end the line. So actually, with these small numbers, right now I'm not assigning very big values or very small values, so all three integer types will work. So it was all about the integers. Now I will try to print out the values from these variables on the screen to see that it is working fine. So I will use system.out.print, and inside that I will say in the quotation I will say variable 1, where 1 value, and that is plus sign to concatenate, where 1 plus quotation where 2 value, I will say quotation where 2, and I will say quotation where 3 value, quotation where 3, and I will end the line. So by this way I am going to print out all 3 variables over here on the screen or on the console. So run it, and you will say variable 1 value 5. Actually you can add the comma also to have better representation or visualization. So now let's run it. You can see where value 1 5, where value 2 5 10, where value 3 15. So this is the way how you can print out the output also over here. In the same way, if you want to print out the short and long words or integer values, you can use the same system.out.print, and I can say long, short, int where 4 plus long int where 5, and we can use new line. So both the previous system and the next print, it will be printed on new line. So I will use /n, and now you can see variable 1 value 5, variable 2 value 10, variable 3 value 15, short int 3, long int 1209, and so on. That was about printing the values. Now let's talk about the string. In order to use the string variable, you have to use the string keywords. So string. In order to add the string variable, we have to keyword string at the start, and then we have to give the name, variable name, like str1, and I can go without assigning value, or I can assign str1 equal to test string value, or something like this. Or I can, as I said, like I can go string str2 equal to test string value 2, or so you can assign by default some values to the variable, or you can create the variable first and then you can assign. So that was an example of string variables. Now next is how we can define or use characters. So okay, so for this one we have to use char variable, and we can say ch1. We need to use the single quotation for characters, and in the same way we can say char ch2. We can define, and then we can use ch2 equal to g, and something like this. So we define these variables over here. I will display all these variable values on the console also at the end. Next is floating numbers, float, and we have to use the keyword float, float, and num1, let's suppose, equal to 30. So it will create a new variable name, floating type name num1 with data type float, and it will store 30 value to that variable. Next is double for the decimal numbers, and you have to use the double keyword, and you can say d1 equal to 123.5, like this, and you can define and you can use these variables like this. Okay, and the last one is boolean. For that you have to use boolean b1 equal to true, or you can say boolean b2 equal to false. So by this way you can define the boolean type variables also. These are the examples how you can define a variable with different data types. You must need to define a variable whenever you have to use a variable. You cannot use a variable without its definition. Okay, so this thing you must need to keep it in mind. In the same way as we've printed out the values from different variables for the integers, we can print out the values for these different data types also, and we can use the same command over here. That's it for this session, and in next session we are going to cover how we can take input with different data types and store them in the variables, and we can use those variable based values to for different purposes. If you like my video, please click on the like button and don't forget to subscribe my channel. Thank you.